Facing reality is often described as a necessary process. It is not always pleasant. Sometimes it is simply the thing that happens when other options run out. You may notice the world around you changing. You may notice yourself changing too. This is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it is barely noticeable at all. There is a tendency to resist what is real. This resistance can take many forms. It can be denial. It can be distraction. It can be a quiet hope that things will return to how they were. Yet reality does not wait for permission. It continues, regardless of our preferences. This is not a punishment. It is simply the nature of things. The self that you were yesterday is not the self you are today. This is not a metaphor. It is a statement of fact. Cells die and regenerate. Thoughts shift. Memories fade. New ones are formed. The process is continuous. There is no clear boundary between the old and the new. Letting go of the previous version of yourself is not always an act of will. Sometimes it happens without notice. Sometimes it is only recognized in hindsight. You may find yourself doing things you would not have done before. You may find yourself thinking thoughts that once seemed foreign. This is not a crisis. It is a transition. Death, in this context, is not dramatic. It is not an ending in the usual sense. It is a quiet cessation of what was. It is the gradual disappearance of habits, preferences, and patterns. In their place, something else emerges. This is often subtle. It is not always celebrated. Rebirth, if it happens, is not always obvious. It does not always feel like a new beginning. It can feel like nothing at all, or it can feel like a vague sense of difference. The world looks the same, but you interact with it differently. This is not a story of triumph. It is a story of change. And within change, there is always the possibility of new light. Facing reality is not a heroic act. It is not a journey with a clear destination. It is simply the recognition of what is present. Sometimes this recognition is uncomfortable. Sometimes it is neutral. Occasionally it is pleasant. Most of the time, it is just there. And in that presence, there is room for quiet hope. Letting the old self die is not a goal. It is not something to achieve. It is something that happens as a consequence of living. The new self is not always better. It is simply different. It is shaped by what has been lost and what has been gained. And sometimes what has been gained is a gentle strength you did not know you had. In the end, facing reality and letting it be reborn from the death of your previous self is not a process that can be controlled. It is not a process that can be rushed. It unfolds at its own pace. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply the way things are. And within that way, there is always the quiet promise of becoming. If you find yourself in this process, there is nothing you need to do. There is nothing you need to fix. You can notice the changes, or you can ignore them. Either way, reality continues. The self continues to change. This is not a story of struggle. It is a story of being. And within that being, there is always a seed of hope.